Hello, this is yet another part of a series of videos that I'm writing about how to make models for Miko Miko Dance. Miko Miko Dance kind of requires a unique format called PMD. Is basically a combination format specifically designed for MMD models. This is just one approach using a plugin for Lightwave. It is by no means the complete approach to doing it, or necessarily the correct approach to creating maps using this methodology. There is a set of tools, and I have yet to reinterpret the instructions from Japanese to English correctly to the point that I'm comfortable of explaining to you how the tools in this plugin work. The plugin, but you can see I have it installed here in Lightwave. I've given it its own tab. There's a full set of tools just about right here that I have. Majority of what I'm going to be doing today will involve bringing in a MMD model and replacing the mesh that is used in the model with a substitute that I will later in the PMD editor finish off so it will work to a certain degree in Miko Miko Dance. One of the things I would probably like to show you, but probably won't have the chance to do it this time around, but I'll probably add sort of a subset to this particular lesson, and that will be how morphs work in MMD. It's supposed to be straightforward, but I don't have a model right now that's properly morphed for MMD. In fact, the model that I've chosen was originally I was just going to use it strictly in Lightwave, but it seems to be a willing participant for the purposes of what we're using. There will be some modifications I'll have to make to this model in order to get it to work in Miko Miko Dance, and I'll go through that shortly. But first, I'm going to explain about the plugin, and to that I'm going to go to the web. The plugin can be found at the Lightwave New Tech Plugins section. It is called AS PMD Helper. It is written by a Japanese guy who I cannot pronounce his name, so I will not begin to do so, but it is right here. Basically what this is a link to this gentleman's website. It is also available through some of the Miko Miko Dance links as well, and I invite you to go in and view it. Majority of the plugin is written in Japanese, and it would be really cool if somebody could translate the instructions into English. The good part about this is the majority of this thing is written in using English, so the plugin itself is not hard to use, just the instructions, and that's one of the reasons why this is a very limited tutorial. So I'll go over to this guy's website, which is this link right here, and you'll notice that he has a nice little set of tools, and I invite you to try them out individually and give them a whirl. The tool that I'm going to use for this particular project is right here, and it is right below the first one, which is the earlier version of the AS PMD Helper. I'm using the more advanced version, which is version 122 or 0.122. Version 115 does work, but it only works up to Lightwave 9.6. Version 122, by the way, will work in version 10 and 11. It will also work on 9. According to him, it will work on 9, whatever version of 9 you have, and whatever version of version 8.5 and 7.5. So it does have some backwards compatibility. There's a .p file that is within this thing, as well as an example Lightwave file, which I've tried to load, and for some reason it crashed 11.51. I haven't tried it on 11.6 yet, and to see if that works. That will probably be something I'll add to the notes later. Anyway, moving right along. The .p file, I put it under the plugins in utilities subdirectory of that, and model utilities, I think, and I went into Lightwave, and Lightwave, I believe, has a somewhere in here has a plugins editor, which allows you to modify Lightwave to display all the plugins the way you would like them. And if you understand Lightwave, you already know how to do that, so I don't need to teach you. So moving right along, one of the things that we will need to do is bring in a skeleton, a pre-built skeleton. And this basically, I do this so when I go to play this back on a playback file in MMD, it will already have a framework that a majority of the animation files will already understand. A lot of them are written both in English and Japanese now. It's kind of like the new format for the bone naming convention. And by using a pre-existing model, it will stay. I can stay within that convention, and anything that animations that I've written strictly for the Japanese models will also work on my model. So there won't be, I won't have to rewrite the wheel for that. So I'm going to bring in a model. That will be our sacrifice. Load it just like I load any other object, except in this case I'm going to go to all files, and I've already worked this model before, and the best matching mesh for this has been the Miko Hasume. the common Miko Hasume model, and so that's what I'll end up using. And hit open, and the model will appear. A couple things right off the bat that is quite obvious when you load this model. You notice this character, that Miko character, is a lot larger than the model I used. So I'll have to go in and I'm going to go over and do a zoom selected here. Let's see, where is that? Fit all. And one of the first things we're going to have to do with the Shelly model, obviously, is make it a lot bigger. We're also going to have to make it, rotate it, and we're going to have to modify the polygons for it. But before we do that, let's go back and look at the Miko Hasume model for a second. And you can tell, importing this thing, you get the Miko Hasume model. It's pretty straightforward. All the detail is there. You could theoretically, you can modify the model in Lightwave and save it off. And even though some parts of it will be lost because there's a initiation process that you kind of have to adhere to, that gets lost if you just save the model off. Hopefully I'll have figured that out at some point, and I'll focus on a tutorial solely for modifying a model. For now, I'm going to basically stick to trying to generate original models for this tutorial. And so we know off the bat we're going to have to size the model, so I might as well get started. I'm going to go back to, the mesh that I'm going to replace it with, and that is right here. And let's see, I think the first thing I'm going to do, while I have this character here, is I'm going to turn around and under view I'm going to go say, where is it, fit all, and that will give me kind of a scale right off the bat of how I'm going to take on the first step of my process here, and that will be, of course, going over to this model and enlarging it appropriately. I will start by selecting the model, and it will select all the bits that I need to do. Just go in here and just do a loop. Make sure to do it under a wireframe, otherwise you're not going to select all the parts. You're just going to select all that happens to be exposed in this plane. And wireframe, all the mesh, everything is exposed. And so I go under polygon mode, I make sure I have my view in wireframe, and I just do a loop around to capture everything, and I've caught everything. And I'm going to go to modify, and I'll go over to size, And then I'll go over here to the back, and I'll just start at the base here, and I'll just go bring it up, and I think about here might be adequate. And then just to verify, I'm going to go back to the MMD model and look at that, and then I'm going to go over and go back to the Shelley model and look at that and say, okay, I'm happy with that, except in the process I've shifted the model and I'm going to have to shift it back. So I'm going to go and kill size. I'm going to make sure that all the things, all selections have been deselected, and I'm going to bring this into full view, and I'm going to select it by lassoing everything. Go and select move, and I'll just grab this and move it. So now the Z value in this case is going to be about 10.2 meters. And we get a look and say, is this pretty much centered? It's probably a little more centered. Okay, I'm gonna be happier with that. And with that, I've centered the model, and there's probably easier ways to do this. In fact, there's probably a couple commands in here that basically say center on Z, which will probably do the same thing instead of dragging it. Center on Z, which basically puts it in center. The only thing is, it's in relation with the tail, and the tail kind of sticks out, and so I'm not that crazy about it. So I'm more comfortable the way I did before, so I'm going to do Control C to undo it. That looks better anyway. Just to me, it looks better. I know everything is aligned because the tail is basically at the center line, and the mane and the tail are pretty much on center. And now, while I have this selected, I'm going to move on to the third step, which is to rotate this model so Shelley is appropriately configured, so when you look at her in her face, you're actually staring at her face. I want to make it so Shelley can actually, so right now for some reason she is twisted. This is the back. Over here, for instance, I got it in the front. Let's see if we go here and go to front. You can actually see her face, but when you go over to the MMD model, you can see that the front is actually her back. And so they got this inverse 180 turn in here for some reason. And rather than argue with why and what it is, I'm just going to say the heck with it, and just go over and turn this a 180 so When you stare at her back, you'll actually be staring at her front. So I'm gonna get out of move mode, which is also, if you want using command lines, is also the T command. I'm gonna lasso this model again under wireframe. I'm gonna go to Y or the rotate tool. I'm gonna pick the center of gravity here, which is at 0, 0. And I'm going to turn her 180. Well, you know, better yet, rather than do that, I'm going to type, let's see, I'll do Control Z. Up. Do Control Z. I'm going to press N, and that will bring up the numeric controls. And basically what that will tell it is, I want to rotate this. It doesn't matter what direction I'll rotate it. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this 180. And hit apply. And of course I did it over the y-axis, which is what I was supposed to do. And everything appears as it should. I'm going to go over and hit turn off rotate and do a drop selection. You can see that Shelly's face is facing the way it should be in relation to the Miko Hasame model. So one last thing I'm going to do, well, not the last thing, but as far as doing things in proportion. Later on, I'm going to adjust the bones on this model in the PMD editor. I'm going to eliminate a lot of bones that we're not going to use, and eventually I might even add some bones, but I'm going to shift things around in the PMD editor. But first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and make sure that the structure of the bones is pretty much, or is as close to the way the Shelly model looks as possible. And this is basically in, but the only thing I could do is maybe shrink the model a little, or raise the size a little to tackle this thing. But you know, at least we're going to try to get within the ballpark. So what I'm going to do is go back to the Miko model, and this time I'm going to choose the bones, and then I'm going to go over and just do a quick comparison. Miko bones, Shelly body, Miko bones, Shelly body, and you just kind of eyeball it and say, yeah, that's going to work. And that merely just allows us to kind of get a grasp of how the bones are going to lie onto the model. So you say, okay, we're ready to kill the Miko mesh and replace it with the Shelly body. Not so quickly. One more thing we have to do. Actually, two. But one other thing we have to do to modify the model. Right now, if I go in and I bring up it's under edit. Maybe it was under Windows. Ah, yeah, there it is. Bring up the windows. You could tell that we only have we only have 738 vertices in here that are 738 meshes in here that are 3-point polygons. We have a ton of subpatches. In the end, for this to work, all of the models have to be 3-point polygons. And right now we've got a bunch of subpatches. Well, the first thing we got to do is we got to freeze the subpatches. And the way you freeze these subpatches is you go into, and I'll leave this up so you can see it actually works. There is a command here, right here under construct, convert, and there's a thing here that says freeze. You press that button and whammo, you just quadrupled your polygon count. Sorry. It's going to be a big model and it's done. Now there is a way to smooth this out. Of course, when you smooth it out, it's going to look rougher when you import it into MMD. So you want things to look smooth and flowing like it would have been if it was a subpatch model. You basically have to leave it the way it is. Also, we still have a bunch of models in here that have four vectors in it, quad polygons I call them. We got to fix that. So we go over to the, I think it's the multiply, and there's a little function which does this, triangulates the meshes for us, and which is a short way of saying turning everything into 3 vector polygons or 3 vector meshes, and it's called triple. And I do that, and 2 magical things happen. Number 1, we're compliant. Number 2, all the non-planar meshes that were in this model have magically disappeared. That's a big benefit to us later on. So, even though we now have over 80,000 polygons, almost not 81,000 polygons in this model, it is now ready to be ported to PMD. So we're set in that respect. I can go ahead and kill this because we made our point on that. Oops, sorry for shaking the world. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to our Asame model. We're going to go to body, and we're going to go to select everything that's there, and we're going to hit the delete key. Bye. Goodbye, Miko. So that mesh is gone. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to our Shelly model. And since we lost our selection on that earlier, we're going to go and select that model. Let's hopefully select everything. And I wish there was a way to, I think we could get away with reducing this a little bit. I did try a function called merge polys. That didn't work out too well. I guess there's probably a thing which hopefully would reduce the polys, if I remember right. In Lightwave it had something like that. I don't know where it's at. Do kind of a degenerate the model so there'd be less polygon, there'd be less of a polygonal count. But I kind of like the way it looks, and spots where I've used this before in MMD, it doesn't seem to be a big problem. So I'm just going to leave it the way it is. And let's see, I'm going to do a Control C, which is basically a copy of the model. Go back to Miko Hasame, and where the model used to be there, the mesh for Miko is, I'm going to do a Control V, and voila, the mesh for Shelly now appears. Now there's probably a few things that I like to do, like my first temptation is to go over and adjust the bones so the bones match up with the model. You can tell right off the bat that the bones, I'll select the bones and select the mesh, and they don't mate up at all. In fact, there'll be a good deal of adjustment that I'll have to go in and do later on. But we'll do that in the PMD model part of this thing, which will be the second part. For now, I'm going to be happy just the way it is, and we'll deal with this later, because I'm going to finish off this discussion, and I guess I'll finish off this discussion. One of the first tasks I'll do is I'll go in to the PMD tools. I will go in, and of course we got the exporter. I won't select the exporter yet. Well, I will go into the layers first, and I want to bring up the layers panel, because I want to go back and select all the layers. Now all the layers are selected like before. The model is triangulated. We got our bones in there, even though our bones are not matched up with our character yet. That will also be done in the PMD editor. The final step will be to do an export. We go to PMD tools, go to exporter, and it says, well, say this is a PMD Miko Hasame. Oh, she's not Miko Hasame anymore. She's Shelly. So I already got a Shelly and a Shelly test 2 here. I'm going to call this Shelly 3. And do a save. And you'll get a little thing. It's basically saying, are you ready to deal with this? And I will say yes. And that is done. And when I go to save this, I'm just going to go ahead and save this by doing a save object as, and I'm just going to go and type and save it, and that will give me something to fall back on if I made some huge mistake and I need to go and do something to the model. But I'm going to bring up the PMD editor, bring it over here. I'm going to go ahead and do open. And there it is. And it has all the comments from the older one, which we'll have to change. And there's the model, and as you can see, everything is there that we saved here. And we're ready for the next step, and that will be in the next video in this series. So, and ready to take a break, and you can move on to the next video, which hopefully I will produce soon. Well, I hope you enjoyed my little tutorial here on how to use Lightwave to generate PMD models. As you can see, I got a PMD model here ready to go. But the only thing I need to do, I'm going to weight shade. As you notice that there's nothing here that's weight shaded to a bone, properly to a bone. I think we go over here to selection object. Where is it? Oh, where are you? Drawing weight. We go into here, and we go into the bones, and we select a bone. And we go into the weight. But as I said before, that is another video. Talk to you later. Have fun, and if you have any, as I say before, if this was not the definitive way of doing this, I'm sure that there's better ways, and if you know of any, I like to find out. So if you could tell me about this and put it in a comment, or go to my Facebook page, which I'll probably leave in the descriptor for this video, or my page over at Google Plus. I'd be interested to learn how to do this better, because I'm sure there's a better way of doing this. It's just that right now there's the age-old problem of dealing with language, And that's, you know, a real big complication when it comes to things like Miko Dance and all these Japanese-based editors. I think one of the things you'll notice right off the bat with this one is that this is one of the first thoroughly converted PMD editing tools. They just recently came up with this. It's really just a hack of a video. Oh, and I also apologize for my voice. I usually don't sound this way, this bad, but I've been dealing with allergies, and it got really bad and made my voice really hoarse. And so hopefully when I do the second video, my voice will sound just a little bit better. Well, have a good time. Happy modeling. Send me those cards and letters. I really appreciate them, both good and bad. I love constructive criticism. I learn a lot from it. And see you out there in Miko Dance Land. Have a good day.